Clara at Ibarra is a Filipino teleserye that is historical. It is a drama, a comedy, a romance teleserye that aired in GMA and also in their YouTube channel just a few months ago. And it aired for 4 months with 105 episodes. And let me tell you a little bit of a background in this show. So, I'm a huge fan of the Noli Me Tangere books. And when I said books, both Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, both were written by the national hero, Jose Rizal. And I remember reading the books and I was simply enthralled by how the story was told. It was very personal, even though I haven't experienced life in the Philippines during the Spanish colonization. But yeah, it's about a book that tells about the Filipino lives during the Spanish colonization in the Philippines back in late 1800s. And something stuck with me. The book wanted me, basically, the book told me that I should be a storyteller. Like, that was my purpose in life. I should be telling my own stories. I should be telling the world my stories as a Filipino. And then I also told myself, okay, someday I'm going to make my own modern film featuring the Noli Me Tangere story. And then suddenly, when I was in school, I saw character posters for Clara Tibara, and it struck me, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe we're going to see a modern retelling of Clara Ibarra, or should I say Noli Me Tangere. And the creators of the show, Suzette Doctolero, Annette Gozon, RJ Nuevas, based on IMDb. They made a very fun show to watch if you're a Filipino and even if you're not. And yeah, this is all about a story following the Cly character, a Gen Z nursing student who went back in time, back in fictional Filipino time, when she started reading the Noli Me Tangere books. And from there, she met with the main characters of Noli Me Tangere: Dennis Trillo's Crisostomo Ibarra and Julian San Jose's Maria Clara. And alongside them, we also met Juancho Trevino's amazing portrayal of Padre Salvi. We also got Padre Damaso. We got Sisa, Basilio, Crispin, all of those amazing characters, very colorful characters. And that's one of the great things about the show itself. The show was able to, given its teleserye nature, the show was able to expand on the characters from the books. In some ways, in some story elements, it feels like the characters that we saw in Maria Clara at Ibarra is a full realization, or maybe an expanded realization of the characters in the book. One good example of this is Julian San Jose's portrayal of Maria Clara, because Maria Clara in the books feels like a passive character, but here in the show, she's very active. She made a lot of decisions. We see some kind of character growth that wasn't available in the books itself. Because sometimes in the books, you're following the main character, Crisostomo Ibarra, and at the same time, you're also following the other villains like Padre Salvi and Padre Damaso, and their choices results to, basically their choices makes the changes for the Maria Clara character in the books. But here, she's very active. She keeps on doing things that actually kinda makes you feel like she's changing the story, even though the show is basically almost a one-to-one recreation of Noli Me Tangere. And I said almost because there were some story elements from the books that were cut, but it kind of makes sense from a budgeting and for storytelling reasons. And I think it feels fine because it's the show was still able to tell the entirety of Noli Me Tangere because it only cuts some minor stuff that doesn't really affect the story. By the end of the day, we started with point A and we ended with point Z, or maybe B. And more about the characters, I told in my reaction videos that one of my favorite fictional characters in any forms of media, whether it's a book, a show, a video game, or a movie, One of my favorite fictional characters is simply Crisostomo Ibarra because it really shows how the environment or how society can greatly change a very kind-hearted person. And we started with the books, and even in the show, that Crisostomo Ibarra is almost in the verge of collapsing, but he keeps on getting pushed several times because of simply the nature of how the Philippine government or even the Philippine society worked back in the day. And one of those things that pushed Crisostomo Ibarra all the way to a very dark side of him are the characters of Padre Damaso and also Padre Salvi. Padre Salvi being one of my most favorite Filipino villains of all time. And the main reasoning of all of Padre Salvi's choices is simply because of his lust for the Maria Clara character, which is Crisostomo Ibarra's, should we say, fiance. That's why the ongoing rivalry between Padre Salvi and Crisostomo Ibarra on screen is always something that I love engaging with. I love engaging with because you're really curious how both of these characters will interact with each other. And then we also have, of course, Padre Damaso. And Padre Damaso's villainousness can be somewhat justifiable because he is in a very high power that he tries to, what's the perfect word for this, whatever power that he already has, he wanted to simply retain it. He doesn't want for that power to to escape him. And one of those powers is simply the fact that he is a Catholic priest. And back in the day, Catholic priests in the Philippines has very significant power, and they can mold the politics that happens in the bayan, or in the country itself. And at the same time, Padre Damaso, without giving away too much spoilers, has a significant connection with one of our characters in Maria Clara Tibara. Another character here also is, of course, the Clyde character. And what I love about the Clyde character is that she is the tool the filmmakers use in order to modernize the books itself, because the books are very dark. The books talks about greed, money, corruption, and even revenge. So how do you tell that kind of story to a modern audience without having to force them to read the books? Because, books are fun to read whenever you're interested in it. But, when it comes to reading books, it takes a lot of it takes a lot of encouragement to read a book. You need to spend a lot of time. There's just simply a huge investment of time whenever you're reading a book. And what's great about movies and TV shows is that they are bite sizes. It's way better to tell a story from a bite-size format. That's why I think this show worked for me as a book reader. It's simply how bite-sized it is, and it's simply how modernized the story is. And Clay is a Gen Z character, and when that means that by the time she went to the narrative of Noli Me Tangere and even El Filibusterismo, she was able to incorporate this Gen Z things about her that was really fun to watch in a historical drama like this. She puts the comedy in the show itself. It's one of those movies like those fish out of water movies, just like the first Wonder Woman film from the DCEU. It's all about Wonder Woman going to a civilized world for the first time, and she has to adapt with the environment. This is the same thing. This is about Clay, a Gen Z person who has to go back in time and she tries to adapt with society of the past. And it was simply really fun to watch how she interacts with it and how she learns from it. And through this, the Clyde character was able to, she was able to make a lot of changes within the society from late 1800s itself, because she tries to implement this modern way of thinking about feminism, basic equal human rights for all, not just for male Filipinos and even, male higher class people. And in some way, she was able to put some of our main characters from the books, just like Maria Clara and Crisostomo Ibarra, in very difficult situations in which they had to make very difficult choices. And the fact that the incorporation of the Clay character and her mingling or interaction with the main characters of Noli Me Tangere makes it for a very fun show to watch. The writers can just simply go they can be simply lazy about the storytelling. They can just put Clay in the Noli Me Tangere story and just be a spectator, just be a passive character, so that we can simply watch Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo in its original form. But and when I say she, the Clay character was able to be a very active character, and she plays a very huge role when it comes to the storytelling of Maria Clara Ibarra. And one of the biggest surprise here was the rivalry of the Clay character and the Padre Salvi character, and I think it's one of the best things about the show itself. Not only I love the rivalry between Ibarra and Padre Salvi, but man, Clay and Padre Salvi is something that was very eye candy to me, because it's all about this unstoppable force meeting an immovable object thing, like that quote from The Dark Knight, which basically shows that, Padre Salvi being the immovable force, and he has to deal with the immovable object, which is the Clay character, because the Clay character never settles. And again, it puts Padre Salvi, the villain, a lot of challenges. If you're Padre Salvi, it feels like you own the world right now. You're very powerful, and then suddenly you're just going to meet this young girl that is really weird, suddenly trying to defy your expectations when it comes to Filipino women. And also, when it comes to Filipino women, one of the minor characters here that was really expanded upon from the books is the Sisa character, which was played brilliantly by Miss Andrea Torres. And the Sisa character from the books, Jose Rizal wrote her because she's the representation of Filipina woman back in the day. And it's really hard to be a woman back in the day. Imagine you're a very low class citizen, you're an Indio, and the fact that you're also a woman, then that will be like really hard to live in a world like that. You don't have basic human rights. Probably you have way less rights compared to a Filipino male back in the day. And imagine you being a mom, and what happens if you lost your children, right? You just simply can't go to a Guardia Civil and maybe file a report, because sometimes they don't care about you because you're a woman. And the fact that you're a woman and you're also mentally ill because of how society treats you, then it really shows. Ozersa was able to write this character back in 1800s, where he already started this conversation about mental illness in the Philippines, right? And the Philippines is one of those earlier countries where there was actually some form of healthcare when it comes to mental illnesses. The Spaniards were actually one of the pioneers of mental illness education. But while that's good and all, Sisa is still a Filipino woman who lost her children, who has an abusive husband, and she's mentally ill, which puts the odds of her survivability very, very low in a time like this. And I love the interaction that she has with the Clay character. You really feel this some kind of bond, like a motherly bond between the two of them, given that Clay's real mother in the real words, her name is Narcissa, which sounds a lot like, Sisa. And that's actually one of the greater things about the show itself, because Clay's backstory interplays well with the story of Noli Me Tangere. Because Clay is a nursing student and she wanted to move outside of the Philippines to take care of foreigners. While I completely understand her choice, because it's really hard to be a nurse in the Philippines, and Filipino nurses are not treated that well when it comes to, financial wise. Her teleportation to the Noli Me Tangere world challenges her, and even challenges us what it means to be a Filipino in a time like this. And this is what the generation really needs, because this show is it felt very personal, because whatever the characters are dealing with in the books, and given that their representation of Filipinos back in the day, they are dealing with the very same problems that modern Filipinos are dealing with, modern Philippines right now. We still have a problem with, the churches, the fact that old ways of thinking can somewhat be a deterrent to modern advancements in society, and the fact that, corruption is still an ongoing thing when it comes to the Philippines. And the show challenges Filipinos on how should Filipinos lead itself, and what does it look like to govern a modern Philippine society? What is best for Filipinos? And what should our leaders do to us? And that's why I really think this show is really needed in a time like this. Now let's talk about the bad things about the show. The only problem with this show is that it fell for the common Filipino tropes that I've seen in Filipino movies and in other Filipino shows. One of those tropes is, of course, the love story thing and the love triangle thing. At first, I was down for that kind of idea, but then eventually it kind of felt wrong as it continued. But I just love the fact that 90%, well, maybe 95% of this show didn't have to rely on those. You know what? I'm going to take that back. Let's talk about flashbacks. There's a ton of flashbacks in this show, and I criticize it because, flashback is a way of telling your audience that you don't trust them, that you're afraid that we might have already forgotten what happened just yesterday when it comes to the story itself. I told in a reaction video that it feels like the filmmakers are trying to spoon feed us information, story elements that is needed in order for us to understand what's happening in the screen right now. And we don't need that. But man, there's a lot of flashbacks here. And it also feels like they're only adding flashbacks just to fill up the runtime for each episode. Which I completely understand, it's also good for the budget and stuff like that. But if you really trust the viewers, then we don't need flashbacks anyway. Now I can imagine that if you're going to rewatch this show, just imagine you're trying to binge watch it and you keep on seeing these flashbacks. I can't see myself like it's going to mess with my head. But anyways, before we end this review, I would like to simply give kudos to the filmmakers because of how simply beautiful the show is. Whoever the cinematographer is, whoever handles the lighting, even the set designs, the people who chose the locations or where to shoot the scenes, everything was simply beautiful. It feels like you can just pause an episode and make that frame a wallpaper to your phone or to your computer, or even hang it on a wall, like on a physical wall. It looks beautiful. It's very eye candy. And knowing that they're shooting this story for TV, then that's just simply well done. Simply well done. You guys don't have to do it because it's not going to get screened on a big screen anyways. It's not a movie anyways, but you guys overdid yourself. Cinematography, amazing. One of the best examples of Filipino cinematography is in this show itself. But yeah, that's my review of Clara Ibarra, and I'm simply going to give it an A. So sorry for the delay, you guys. I got just really busy with school and work. Same thing, but now I'm in vacation. I still have to go to work, but I'm in vacation mode right now because I got no school, which means yes, my reaction videos to Voltes 5 is coming. I haven't seen any kinds of scenes yet. I haven't seen the infamous transformation scene, Voltes 5 scene, stuff like that. I've heard the song. Wow. Didn't know that it was Julian San Jose who sang the song. But I would also want to hear the ending theme song because that's like one of my most favorite songs of all time. But yeah, I've read some comments, some positive ones about Voltes 5 and some negative ones, but we're going to talk about that on the next upcoming set of videos, which will be focusing on Voltes 5. So anyways, that's my review of Mana Clara at Ibarra, or what do you guys think about it. Leave it down in the comment section below, and I'm going to interact with you guys by leaving my own replies. And by the way, this show had Maria Clara at Ibarra had a ton of rewards, so congrats to it. It deserves the rewards. And hey, this I feel is one of the greatest Filipino shows of all time. But I've only seen some small amount of Filipino television shows anyways. But yeah, this show is simply amazing. Goodbye, you guys. Take care and God bless.